The privilege of a lifetime is being who you are. Joseph Campbell. If there is one idea at the heart of this book, one simple truth that everything else grows from, it is this: life is what you make it. That statement may sound obvious, even cliché, but the longer you live, the more you realize how rarely people truly believe it. Many of us move through life reacting instead of choosing, inheriting expectations instead of questioning them, and following paths laid out by others instead of listening deeply to ourselves. This book is not about success in the narrow sense. It's not about getting rich, building status, or checking off society's definition of achievement. It's about something far more personal and far more difficult: living a life that actually feels like your own. We live in a world of unprecedented comfort, convenience, and choice, and yet, paradoxically, many people feel lost, anxious, empty, or disconnected. We are surrounded by opportunity, but unsure what to do with it. We are told we can be anything, but rarely helped to understand who we are. This is a book about that confusion and about finding clarity. At its core, this is a book about values. Values are the quiet forces beneath our decisions. They shape how we define success, how we treat others, how we work, how we give, and how we measure whether a life has been well lived. Money comes and goes, status rises and falls, but values endure. They are the steady currency that buys peace of mind and self-respect. This is also a book about identity, about the talents, inclinations, quirks, and callings that make each of us unique. Identity is not something handed to us fully formed. It is something we discover gradually, often painfully, through choices, mistakes, courage, and honesty. Values guide our choices. Our choices shape our identity, and together they create the life we live. Life is what we make it, but the process of making a life is rarely simple. Expectations blur our vision, economic pressures distort our priorities, fear, comparison, and the desire for approval pull us away from ourselves. Sometimes luck helps us, sometimes it hurts us, but in the end, whether we like it or not, we are participants in the making of our own lives. This is both our greatest burden and our greatest opportunity. So the real question becomes, what kind of person will you choose to be? When faced with daily decisions, small ones and large ones, will you choose the path of least resistance or the path of greatest meaning? Will you settle for making a living, or will you try to earn a life? Will you shrink away from honesty and connection, or open yourself to deeper relationships and responsibility? And perhaps the most challenging question of all, how will you become worthy of the gifts you've been given? Because whether we like it or not, every one of us has received gifts. Some are obvious: family, education, opportunity, talent, security. Others are quieter: resilience, empathy, curiosity, imagination. None of us earned our starting point. We simply arrived. And that leads us to a difficult truth many people would rather avoid. We did not choose our circumstances, but we are responsible for what we do with them. Answers to these questions cannot be handed to you. They cannot be outsourced to parents, teachers, institutions, or even books like this one. They come only from within, from reflection, experience, and courage. The purpose of this book is not to provide instructions, but to raise the right questions, to offer a framework for thought, conversation, and self-examination. So, who is speaking to you here? Not a philosopher, not a self-help guru, not someone claiming to have figured everything out, just someone who has lived with these questions, sometimes comfortably, often uncomfortably, and learned that ignoring them comes at a far higher cost than facing them. I was born into a loving, emotionally secure family. That alone placed me far ahead of many people. Over time, through a combination of hard work, integrity, and circumstance, my family also became wealthy and widely known. My father, Warren Buffett, is one of the most successful investors in history. That fact has shaped my life, but it has never defined it. From an early age, it was made clear to me that privilege was not a prize to enjoy unquestioned, but a responsibility to understand. Wealth was never presented as proof of worth, but as something morally neutral, capable of doing harm or good depending on how it was used. In our family, one idea was taken very seriously. From those to whom much is given, much is expected. And importantly, the most meaningful gifts had nothing to do with money. They were gifts of love, stability, education, mentorship, and belief. They were gifts meant to be honored, not hoarded. Like anyone born into advantage, I had to wrestle with what that meant. I had to learn how to make the best of a good situation without letting it make me complacent, entitled, or disconnected from the world around me. I had to learn how to live a life that felt earned. Ironically, today I find myself entrusted with enormous philanthropic responsibility, charged with helping give away resources meant to improve lives, while still thinking of myself simply as a working person, a musician, a composer, someone whose value comes from work and engagement, not from inheritance. And that tension between privilege and purpose, between comfort and contribution, is not unique to me. It exists everywhere. It exists wherever people sense that life must be about more than accumulation and approval. This book is written for people who feel that tension, for young people trying to choose a path without losing themselves, for parents hoping to raise children with gratitude instead of entitlement, for professionals questioning whether success has come at too cost a cost, for anyone living in a world of abundance and inequality, wondering how to respond with integrity. It is written for people who recognize that making a living is not the same as making a difference, and that the two should not be separated. If this book does its job, it will not tell you what to think. It will help you think more clearly. It will not offer easy answers. It will encourage better questions. And if it succeeds, it may help you feel a little less alone in the quiet, persistent work of becoming who you truly are. Because life does not hand us meaning. We create it, choice by choice, action by action, day by day. And the time to begin is not someday, it is now. Before moving forward, pause this audio. Take a deep breath. Ask yourself one honest question. Am I living a life I chose or one I inherited by default? Carry that question with you as we continue.
You are listening to the Rich Diary Podcast Show.
Chapter 1. Normal is what you're used to. Trust in the goodness of the world is one of the greatest gifts a child can receive. People used to say it to me all the time. You're Warren Buffett's son, but you seem so normal. They usually meant it as a compliment, and I always took it as one, but not for myself. I took it as a compliment to my family. Because when we say someone is normal, what we're really saying is this: they know how to live among other people. They know how to trust, connect, and function in the world. Normal doesn't mean average. It doesn't mean unremarkable. It means grounded. And grounded people, people who feel at home in the world, don't get that way by accident. That sense of normalcy begins with trust. At its deepest level, trust is the belief that the world is a good place. Not perfect, not fair, but fundamentally worth engaging with. Trust is what allows a person to wake up each morning without fear hardening into cynicism. It's what makes curiosity possible. It's what keeps bitterness from taking over when life disappoints us, as it inevitably will. Trust in the world begins with trust in people. The belief that, despite all evidence to the contrary, human beings are fundamentally inclined toward decency, that most people want to do the right thing even when they fail. This belief is not naive, it is necessary. Without it, life becomes a defensive exercise, Relationships turn transactional, work becomes survival, love becomes risk instead of refuge. And where does this trust come from? It begins at home. Not in the size of the house, not in the amount of money, but in the presence of care. I grew up in a modest home, in a stable neighborhood, surrounded by people who knew my name. My grandparents lived nearby, neighbors waved, doors weren't always locked. I learned, without anyone ever saying it out loud, that I belonged somewhere. That sense of belonging had nothing to do with wealth. It had everything to do with attention, consistency, and love. Trust grows when children are seen, when questions are welcomed, when mistakes don't result in humiliation. From trust grows tolerance. Tolerance is not about agreeing with everyone. It's about recognizing that difference doesn't equal danger, that diversity expands us rather than threatening us. Intolerance shrinks the world. Tolerance enlarges it. Every prejudice we hold reduces the richness of our own lives. When we exclude others, we don't protect ourselves, we impoverish ourselves. I learned tolerance not through lectures, but through exposure, through conversations, through curiosity, through watching my parents engage respectfully with people of different races, religions, and viewpoints. I learned that disagreement wasn't something to fear, it was something to explore. That lesson extended naturally into a love of education, not education as job training, but education as curiosity, education as learning how people think, feel, struggle, and hope. True education doesn't end with diplomas. It ends only when curiosity dies. And finally, there was work ethic, not the kind that glorifies exhaustion, not the kind that worships money, but the kind that treats work as meaningful engagement, as something worthy of focus, dignity, and care. I watched my father work, not for money, but for fascination, for challenge, for joy. And I learned something essential. Work done with love gives energy instead of draining it. When work becomes an expression of who you are, not just what you earn, it builds self-respect that no economic downturn can take away. This is what normal really means. It means growing up with trust instead of fear, curiosity instead of judgment, engagement instead of entitlement. And even if you didn't receive these things early in life, the good news is this: they can still be learned, they can still be practiced, they can still be chosen. Because normal is not what you're born into. Normal is what you're used to. And what you get used to over time shapes who you become. Reflect quietly today and ask yourself, what beliefs about the world did I grow up with, and which ones am I ready to change?
You are listening to the Rich Diary Podcast Show.
Chapter 2. No one deserves anything. Humility begins the moment we realize that our starting point was never earned. No one asked to be born. No one chooses their parents. No one selects the country, the city, the home, or the circumstances into which they arrive. A life can begin in a quiet hospital room with caring doctors and hopeful parents, or on a dirt floor in a place where survival itself is uncertain. A child may be born into abundance, or into struggle, or into something in between. Some arrive welcomed and protected. Others arrive into chaos, neglect, or danger. None of us had a say in any of it. And yet, despite this obvious truth, we live in a world that quietly but persistently acts as if people deserve the circumstances they're born into. We talk about success and failure as though they were moral verdicts rather than complex outcomes shaped by luck, timing, support, and opportunity. So let's begin with a statement that may feel uncomfortable but is essential. At the start of life, no one deserves anything. Not wealth, not poverty, not talent, not hardship. Birth is not a reward or a punishment. It is random. This randomness is hard to accept. Human beings crave fairness and logic. We want the world to make sense. We want to believe that good things happen to good people and bad things happen to bad people. But reality refuses to cooperate with that comforting story. For those born into hardship, this randomness can feel cruel. It can create anger, resentment, and the sense that the universe is hostile. For those born into privilege, something equally strange often happens. They begin to believe, quietly, unconsciously, that their good fortune must somehow be justified, that they earned it, that they deserve it. This belief is deeply flawed, but also deeply human. The word deserve itself tells us why. To deserve something, according to its original meaning, is to merit it through one's actions or qualities. Deserving is tied to effort, behavior, and character. It has nothing to do with accidents of birth. And yet, we casually say things like, they deserve success, they deserve to be rich, they deserve a better life. Often what we really mean is, they were lucky. Luck makes us uncomfortable, so we disguise it as merit. But confusing luck with worth is dangerous. It leads to entitlement on one side and shame on the other. It convinces some people that they are superior and others that they are failures before either group has even had a fair chance to act. There is, however, a distinction that changes everything. A profound difference exists between deserving good fortune and becoming worthy of it. You don't deserve the hand you're dealt, but you can become worthy of it through how you play it. Becoming worthy is not about guilt or self-denial. It's about responsibility. It's about recognizing that advantages are not trophies to display, but tools to use. It's about understanding that privilege is not an excuse to do less, but a reason to do more. This idea can be unsettling, especially for people who grew up with advantages. It can create what I call gift guilt, the quiet discomfort that comes from knowing you've benefited from things you didn't earn. Gift guilt whispers questions like, why me? What right do I have to enjoy this? Will I ever do enough to justify what I've been given? Some people respond to this guilt by denying it. They pretend the world is fair and that everyone has what they deserve. Others numb it with consumption, distraction, or cynicism. Neither response leads to peace. But acknowledging gift guilt, really facing it, can be the beginning of purpose. Because guilt, when examined honestly, often contains an invitation. The invitation is this: use what you'd been given well. There's an old idea, found in many traditions, that grace is not proven by possession, but by action. A gift becomes meaningful only when it is expressed. Wealth without generosity becomes emptiness. Talent without effort becomes waste. Opportunity without engagement becomes stagnation. The tragedy of entitlement is not that it enjoys privilege, it's that it never earns self-respect. People who glide through life on unearned advantages often appear confident, polished, and secure, but beneath the surface, something is missing. Without the struggle of earning one's place, there is no deep-rooted confidence. Without having faced failure, success feels hollow. Without having chosen their own path, identity remains fragile. Self-respect comes from effort, from commitment, from having something at stake. This is why making life too easy for someone, even out of love, is a quiet form of harm. When obstacles are removed too early, resilience never develops. When rewards are given without effort, motivation fades. When paths are pre-cleared, purpose never fully forms. A wise parent, mentor, or society gives enough support to empower, but not so much as to replace self-discovery. The goal is not comfort, the goal is capability. And this applies not only to families, but to individuals navigating their own lives. If you've been given advantages, education, stability, connections, the question is not whether you should feel guilty for them. The question is, what are you doing with them? Are you using them to avoid risk or to take meaningful ones? Are they insulating you from growth or enabling it? Are they serving only you or expanding outward? Becoming worthy does not mean becoming perfect. It means becoming engaged. It means refusing to coast. It means choosing contribution over complacency. And for those who did not receive advantages early in life, this truth is equally powerful. Your worth was never diminished by circumstances. You were never less deserving of dignity, opportunity, or respect. The injustice of the world says nothing about your value. No one deserves their starting point, but everyone deserves the chance to make meaning of it. When we let go of the idea that life owes us something remarkable happens. We stop measuring ourselves against fantasies of fairness and start measuring ourselves by integrity. We stop asking, "What should I have been given?" and start asking, "What can I give now?" This shift is liberating. It frees the privileged from guilt without responsibility. It frees the disadvantaged from shame without blame. It places the emphasis where it belongs, not on what happened to us, but on what we choose to do next. Life does not promise fairness, but it does offer agency, and agency exercised with humility and purpose is enough to build a meaningful life.
And this is the Rich Diary Podcast. If you love this content, please subscribe and share now. Mondays to Fridays, 12 p.m. each day.
Take a few quiet minutes today and reflect honestly on this question. What gifts, visible or invisible, have I received, and how can I use one of them in service of something beyond myself this week?
Chapter 3. The Myth of the Level Playing Field. Fairness is not the world as it is. It is the world we are still trying to build. One of the most comforting ideas we tell ourselves is that the world is fair. We like to believe that effort leads to reward, that talent rises to the top, and that anyone, given enough determination, can succeed. This belief is deeply woven into our stories, our education systems, our political language, and our sense of identity. It's also not entirely true. The idea of a level playing field suggests that everyone starts in roughly the same place, with roughly the same opportunities, and that outcomes are mostly determined by effort and ability. It's a tidy explanation. It's motivating, and in some cases, it even works. But as a general truth about the world, it is a myth. Some people begin the race already ahead. Others begin it carrying weight. Some don't even know there's a race at all. To acknowledge this is not to deny personal responsibility. It is to recognize reality. And recognizing reality is the first step toward compassion, wisdom, and effective action. I grew up surrounded by people who worked hard, played by the rules, and achieved remarkable success. It would have been easy for me to conclude that success was simply a matter of discipline and intelligence. But the longer I lived, the more I saw what was invisible in that story. The networks, the safety nets, the second chances, and the unspoken assumptions that smoothed the path. Privilege is often quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It simply removes obstacles before you ever notice them. A good school, a stable home, access to mentors, a safety net when risks don't pay off. These things don't guarantee success, but they dramatically increase the odds. When people who benefit from these advantages believe the playing field is level, they may conclude, without malice, that those who struggle simply didn't try hard enough. And when people who struggle internalize that message, they may conclude, without justification, that they are somehow defective. Both conclusions are wrong, and both are harmful. Inequality doesn't just distort outcomes, it distorts understanding. It allows those at the top to feel morally justified in their comfort, and those at the bottom to feel morally responsible for their suffering. In truth, neither position reflects the complexity of human lives.
A fair world would not require heroic effort just to survive. It would not punish people for circumstances beyond their control. It would not confuse fortune with virtue. And yet, here we are. So what do we do with this reality? One tempting response is denial, to insist that the playing field must be level because acknowledging otherwise feels destabilizing. If success isn't earned entirely by merit, what does that say about us? If failure isn't entirely the fault of those who fail, what does that demand of us? Denial is comfortable, but it is also paralyzing. Another response is guilt. Those who recognize their advantage may feel overwhelmed by it. They may withdraw, disengage, or attempt to equalize the world through symbolic gestures that change little. Guilt alone doesn't help. Neither does defensiveness. The more constructive response is humility. Humility says, I see that I have benefited from forces beyond my control. Humility says, this does not make me bad, but it does make me responsible. Responsibility does not mean fixing everything. It does not mean carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. It means refusing to pretend that the world is fair when it isn't, and refusing to benefit from unfairness without question. True equality begins not with policies or programs, but with perception. When we truly see one another, not as winners and losers, but as human beings shaped by circumstance, we begin to act differently. We listen more carefully. We judge less quickly. We offer help without assuming superiority. We give without needing gratitude. This is especially important when it comes to giving. One of the most subtle dangers of inequality is that it can turn generosity into a performance of power. When those with resources see themselves as saviors rather than partners, their help, even when well-intentioned, can reinforce the very hierarchies they claim to challenge. Real help begins with respect. Real generosity begins with listening. The people closest to a problem usually understand it better than those observing from a distance. Solutions imposed without humility often fail, not because the intent was wrong, but because the perspective was incomplete. A level playing field cannot be created for people. It must be created with them. And here's the uncomfortable truth many avoid. Inequality harms everyone, not just those at the bottom. It narrows empathy. It hardens hearts. It creates fear, resentment, and isolation on all sides. Those with privilege may live comfortably, but often at the cost of connection. Gated communities, guarded interactions, and social bubbles may offer safety, but they also reduce understanding. They make it easier to forget how others live and harder to imagine shared futures. A divided world is not a stable one, and a society that normalizes inequality eventually pays for it, economically, socially, and morally. So if the playing field is not level and pretending otherwise helps no one, what is the path forward? The answer is not perfection. It is participation. Participation in making systems fairer. Participation in listening across difference. Participation in using influence, however small, to expand opportunity rather than hoard it. You don't need to fix the world, but you do need to decide how you will live in it. Will you look away from discomfort or lean into understanding? Will you benefit quietly or engage responsibly? Will you assume equality or work toward it? The myth of the level playing field is comforting because it absolves us of responsibility. But truth, though less comfortable, gives us something better: agency. Agency to act with humility. Agency to give with respect. Agency to measure success not by how far ahead we are, but by how many people we help bring forward. Life is what you make it, but the world you help make matters too.
This week, notice one assumption you make about someone else's life or success. Pause. Replace judgment with curiosity. Ask yourself, what might I be missing about their story?
You are listening to the Rich Diary Podcast Show.
Chapter 4. The Mixed Blessing of Choice. Freedom is not the absence of limits, it is the wisdom to choose within them. We often assume that more choice automatically leads to more happiness. It sounds logical. If choice represents freedom, then more freedom should mean a better life. Yet many of the most anxious, dissatisfied, and overwhelmed people in the world live in societies where choice is abundant. Meanwhile, people with far fewer options often display a clarity of purpose that seems elusive to those surrounded by opportunity. Choice, it turns out, is a complicated gift. When used well, it allows us to shape lives aligned with our values. When misunderstood, it becomes a source of paralysis, confusion, and quiet despair. For much of human history, choice was limited. People were born into trades, communities, and expectations that rarely changed. This restriction often came at a cost, especially to women, minorities, and anyone whose talents did not fit the narrow roles available. But limitation also brought structure. It answered questions before they were asked. Today, many of those constraints have fallen away. Young people are told they can be anything, go anywhere, and reinvent themselves endlessly. While this message is empowering, it also carries an unspoken burden. If everything is possible, then every outcome becomes your responsibility. When life doesn't turn out as hoped, there is no tradition to blame, no rigid system to resist. The failure feels personal. Choice creates freedom, but it also creates pressure. I've seen this tension play out repeatedly, especially among young adults navigating education, careers, and identity. They are told to follow their passion, but not given the time or space to discover what that passion might be. They are encouraged to explore, but judged if exploration takes too long. They are offered endless options, but little guidance in choosing among them. Too much choice can become paralyzing. When faced with unlimited options, the fear of choosing incorrectly can prevent us from choosing at all. We delay commitment, hoping for certainty that never arrives. We keep doors open so long that none of them lead anywhere. We treat life like a permanent audition rather than a lived experience. Choice without commitment leads to drift. Commitment without reflection leads to regret. The challenge is finding the balance. Parents, educators, and mentors often struggle with this as well. Wanting to give children every opportunity, they sometimes remove obstacles that are actually essential to growth. They smooth paths that should be explored. They protect against failure so thoroughly that resilience never develops. But struggle is not the enemy of growth. Meaningful struggle is its foundation. Learning to choose well requires experience, including the experience of choosing poorly and recovering. Shielding people from all consequences does not prepare them for freedom, it undermines it. The goal of guidance is not to eliminate difficulty, but to provide a framework within which choices can be made thoughtfully. Values provide that framework. Without values, choice becomes noise. With values, choice becomes direction. When you know what matters to you, integrity, creativity, service, curiosity, community, decisions become clearer. Not easier, but clearer. You stop asking, which option gives me the most approval, and start asking, which option aligns with who I am trying to become. This shift transforms freedom from burden to opportunity. Another challenge of choice is comparison. In a world of social media and constant exposure, we are perpetually aware of paths we didn't take. Every decision seems to close off countless alternatives, each of which appears, at least online, more exciting, more successful, more fulfilling. But comparison is an unreliable guide. We rarely see the full cost of other people's choices. We see highlights, not sacrifices, outcomes, not trade-offs, appearances, not realities. Every choice carries both gain and loss. There is no perfect path, only chosen ones. The sooner we accept this, the sooner we can stop second-guessing our lives and start inhabiting them. Choice also evolves over time. What is right at one stage of life may not be right at another. Growth does not invalidate earlier decisions, it builds upon them. Changing direction is not failure, it is adaptation. The mistake is not choosing and then changing. The mistake is never choosing at all. There is a quiet courage in commitment, in saying, "For now, this is my path," and walking it with intention. Commitment allows depth. It allows mastery. It allows relationship. It allows meaning to emerge. Many people search endlessly for clarity before acting, but clarity often comes after action, not before it. We understand ourselves by engaging with the world, not by endlessly analyzing it from a distance. Action reveals values. Experience refines them. Choice, then, is not about finding the perfect option. It is about choosing well enough and then bringing care, effort, and integrity to that choice. And when mistakes happen, and they will, the question becomes not, "Why did I fail?" but "What did I learn?" Mistakes are not evidence that choice was a mistake. They are evidence that you are participating in life. The mixed blessing of choice is this: it gives us the power to shape our lives, but demands that we take responsibility for that power. It asks us to live deliberately rather than passively. It invites us to grow up, not in age, but in wisdom. Freedom is not doing whatever you want whenever you want. Freedom is choosing what matters and standing by it. Choose one area of your life where you've been avoiding commitment. Make a thoughtful decision this week, small or large, and take one concrete step in that direction.
You are listening to the Rich Diary Podcast Show.
Chapter 5. The Mystery of Vocation. Your calling is not something you discover all at once. It is something you grow into. Few words carry as much pressure as the word calling. It suggests that somewhere, hidden and waiting, is a single perfect path, a job, a role, a purpose that once found will bring clarity, fulfillment, and peace. It implies certainty, finality, a sense that once you arrive, the searching will be over. For many people, this idea becomes a source of anxiety rather than inspiration. They ask themselves questions like, what am I meant to do with my life? What if I choose wrong? What if I miss my calling? But vocation, the work of a life, is not a puzzle with one correct solution. It is a relationship. It evolves, it deepens, and often it surprises us. The word vocation comes from the Latin vocare, meaning to call. But calls do not always arrive as clear instructions. More often, they arrive as quiet nudges, interests that persist, problems that bother us more than others, or activities that absorb us so fully that time seems to disappear. A vocation is rarely revealed all at once. It is shaped through attention and effort. Many people wait for passion to appear before committing to a path, but passion is usually not the starting point, it is the result. Passion grows when we invest ourselves in something, when we develop skill, when we see the impact of our work on others. Commitment precedes clarity. This is especially difficult in a culture that celebrates instant success and early achievement. We admire prodigies and overnight sensations, forgetting how rare and misleading those stories are. Most meaningful lives are built gradually through sustained engagement rather than sudden revelation. I didn't grow up knowing exactly what I wanted to do.
Music interested me, but interest alone does not equal vocation. It takes discipline, practice, and perseverance to turn curiosity into craft. There were moments of doubt, periods of uncertainty, and times when the path forward felt anything but clear. But each step taught me something about my strengths, my limits, and what kind of work felt honest to me. A vocation is not just about what you do, it is about how you do it. Two people can do the same job, but experience it entirely differently. One may feel drained and disconnected, the other energized and purposeful. The difference is not always the task, it is the relationship to the work. Meaning emerges when work aligns with values. Work that reflects your values gives dignity to effort. It transforms routine into contribution. It allows you to see yourself as part of something larger than personal gain. This doesn't mean your vocation must be dramatic or publicly celebrated. Many deeply meaningful callings are quiet and unseen. Caregivers, teachers, craftspeople, organizers, parents, people who show up consistently and do their work with integrity often live lives rich in purpose without external recognition. A vocation is not measured by applause, it is measured by alignment. Alignment between who you are and what you do, between your values and your actions, between your abilities and the needs of the world. And here's an important truth often overlooked: vocations change. The work that calls you to 20 may not call you to 40. This is not betrayal, it is growth. Life expands, responsibilities shift, and our understanding of ourselves deepens. Letting go of an old vocation can be as difficult as finding a new one, especially if identity is tied too tightly to role. But clinging to a vocation that no longer fits can drain meaning from life. The courage to change direction, when guided by reflection rather than fear, is a sign of maturity, not failure. Another myth surrounding vocation is that it must be pleasurable at all times. Meaningful work is often challenging. It demands effort, patience, and persistence. There are days when even the most aligned work feels heavy. Fulfillment does not mean constant happiness, it means sustained engagement. Work that matters will test you, it will expose weaknesses, it will require growth, but it will also offer something rare, the sense that your effort counts for something beyond yourself. This is where vocation intersects with service. The most enduring vocations are those connected to the needs of others. When work is oriented entirely around personal gain, it often becomes empty. When it is connected, even loosely, to contributing to the well-being of others, it gains resilience. Service does not mean self-sacrifice to the point of depletion. It means recognizing that meaning flows outward as well as inward. It means understanding that personal fulfillment and social contribution are not opposites, they are partners. Finding your vocation, then, is less about asking, "What will make me happy?" and more about asking, "Where can my abilities meet the world's needs in a way that feels honest?" That question cannot be answered all at once. It must be lived. Try things, commit for a season, learn from experience, adjust. Vocation is not found by waiting, it is revealed by doing. And perhaps the most liberating truth of all is this: your worth is not dependent on having a clearly defined vocation. You are not behind because you are still exploring. Life is not a race towards certainty. Some people are called to one path for decades. Others are called to many paths, one after another. Both can be lives of meaning. The mystery of vocation is not something to solve, it is something to honor. Choose one activity or responsibility in your life right now and ask, how can I engage with this more fully, more honestly, and more generously this week?
You are listening to the Rich Diary Podcast Show.
Chapter 6. Buying Time. Money is useful only when it gives us the freedom to live deliberately. Most people say they want more money, but when you listen closely,
When you really listen, you realize that money itself is rarely the goal. What people truly want is what money seems to promise: security, comfort, options, and freedom. In other words, they want time. Time to breathe, time to choose, time to live. Money, at its best, is a tool for buying time. At its worst, it becomes the thing that steals it. This paradox sits at the center of modern life. We trade hours, days, and years of our lives for income, telling ourselves that we'll eventually slow down, enjoy ourselves, and live fully once we've earned it. But for many, that moment never arrives. The lifestyle expands, the obligations multiply, and time becomes more scarce, not less. The question is not whether money matters, it does. The question is, what is money buying you? If money is buying peace of mind, flexibility, and the ability to choose work that aligns with your values, it is serving you well. If it is buying status, distraction, or the approval of others at the cost of your health, relationships, or integrity, it may be costing far more than it gives. We often talk about making a living, but rarely about earning a life. The two are not the same. Making a living is about survival. Earning a life is about intention. A life filled with possessions but empty of time is not wealth, it is entrapment. Many people fall into this trap gradually. A larger home requires a larger mortgage. A higher salary justifies a more demanding job. Comfort slowly transforms into necessity. What once felt like choice becomes obligation. This is how people end up with lives they can't afford to leave. True freedom is not having everything, it is needing less. This does not mean rejecting ambition or success. It means being honest about the trade-offs you are making. Every financial decision is also a time decision. Every commitment, professional or personal, claims a portion of your life. The most dangerous financial mistake is not earning too little. It is building a life that requires too much. When your expenses demand constant high income, your freedom shrinks. When your identity becomes tied to consumption, stepping back feels like failure, even when stepping back would bring relief. Buying time requires restraint. It requires asking difficult questions. How much is enough? What am I sacrificing to maintain this lifestyle? Is this expense expanding my life or narrowing it? These are not questions society encourages us to ask. We are surrounded by messages that equate success with accumulation and busyness with importance. Slowing down is often seen as weakness. Choosing simplicity can feel like opting out. But opting out of what? A race that never ends, a standard that keeps shifting, a version of success that leaves little room for reflection or joy. Buying time does not mean avoiding work. Meaningful work requires effort, but it means working with a long-term vision rather than short-term appetite. It means designing a life that allows for rest, relationships, and renewal. Time is not only about leisure, it is about presence. Presence with people you love, presence with your own thoughts, presence with the world around you. Without time, even the most beautiful moments pass unnoticed. One of the great illusions of wealth is that it can substitute for presence. It cannot. No amount of money can replace missed conversations, neglected relationships, or unexamined lives. People often say they are too busy for what matters most, but busy is rarely the full story. More often, it is a sign that priorities have gone unexamined. Time reveals what you value. Where you spend your time is where your life is actually happening, not where you say it's happening or hope it will happen someday. Buying time also means protecting it. Not every opportunity is worth taking. Not every invitation deserves a yes. Not every increase in income justifies the loss of autonomy. Learning to say no to projects, expectations, and comparisons is essential to living deliberately. This is not selfishness, it is stewardship. Your time is not an infinite resource. Treating it as such leads to burnout and regret. Treating it as precious leads to clarity. And clarity allows for generosity. When you have time, you can give attention. When you have attention, you can offer presence. When you offer presence, you give something far more valuable than money. Buying time ultimately is about aligning resources with values. It is about choosing a pace that allows you to live, not just produce. It is about resisting the assumption that more is always better. And it is about recognizing that a meaningful life is built not on what you accumulate, but on what you experience, contribute, and share. In the end, money is only as valuable as the life it allows you to live. If it buys fear, exhaustion, and disconnection, it is too expensive. If it buys freedom, engagement, and peace of mind, it is worth far more than its price. This week, review one financial or time-related commitment in your life and ask, is this buying me freedom or costing me presence? Make one small adjustment towards reclaiming your time.
You are listening to the Rich Diary Podcast Show.
Chapter 7. Don't just find your bliss. Do your bliss. Bliss is not discovered by waiting. It is created through action. For years, people have been encouraged to find their bliss. The phrase sounds inspiring. It suggests that somewhere out there, perhaps hidden behind the right career, relationship, or lifestyle, is a state of joy waiting to be uncovered. If you search hard enough, the thinking goes, you will stumble upon it, and everything will fall into place. But this idea can be misleading. Bliss is not a destination you arrive at. It is not a feeling that appears fully formed, and it is certainly not something you passively discover. Bliss is something you do. The belief that happiness will arrive once circumstances are perfect keeps many people stuck. They wait for confidence before acting, for clarity before committing, for motivation before beginning. But waiting for the feeling to come first often results in doing nothing at all. Action precedes emotion. Engagement creates meaning. Bliss grows from involvement, from investing time, energy, and attention into something that matters to you. This does not mean ignoring reality or responsibilities. It means understanding that passion is built through effort, not fantasy. The most fulfilled people are not those who avoided difficulty. They are those who leaned into meaningful work despite uncertainty. There is a difference between dreaming and doing. Dreaming imagines a better life without risk. Doing accepts risk in pursuit of growth. Doing your bliss requires discipline. It requires showing up when enthusiasm fades. It requires practicing when progress is slow. It requires patience when results don't immediately appear. But discipline is not the enemy of bliss. It is its foundation. When you commit to something over time, skill develops. As skill develops, confidence grows. And as confidence grows, joy follows. This is the quiet formula behind mastery in any field. People often confuse enjoyment with ease. They expect bliss to feel light and effortless, but meaningful work often feels demanding before it feels rewarding. The satisfaction comes not from avoiding struggle, but from overcoming it. Bliss without effort is fleeting. Bliss earned through effort endures. Another obstacle to doing your bliss is fear of judgment. Many people hesitate to pursue what matters to them because it may not look impressive, practical, or successful to others. They fear being misunderstood. They fear failing publicly. They fear discovering they're not as good as they hoped. But no one becomes skilled without first being awkward. No one becomes confident without first being uncertain. and no one builds a meaningful life without risking embarrassment along the way. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the decision to act despite it. Doing your bliss also means letting go of comparison. The moment you measure your path against someone else's, you lose sight of your own. Other people's timelines, talents, and opportunities are not standards by which your life should be judged. Bliss is personal. It cannot be outsourced or copied. What energizes one person may exhaust another. What feels meaningful to you may look insignificant to someone else. That does not make it less real. The only reliable measure is whether the work deepens your engagement with life. Doing your bliss does not require dramatic gestures. It often begins with small, consistent actions: writing a page, practicing an instrument, volunteering an hour, learning a skill. Over time, these actions compound. They shape identity. You become what you repeatedly do. And here is an important truth. Bliss is not constant happiness. It includes frustration, boredom, and doubt. But it also includes purpose, absorption, and the quiet satisfaction of progress. People who wait to feel inspired before acting miss the deeper reward, the sense of meaning that comes from perseverance. Doing your bliss also clarifies what isn't your bliss. Not every interest will sustain long-term commitment. That's not failure, it's information. Trying and letting go is part of the process. Engagement sharpens discernment, and eventually something sticks, not because it's perfect, but because it's worth the effort. The danger of waiting to find bliss is that life passes in the meantime. Opportunities are missed, skills remain undeveloped, potential stays theoretical. Action turns possibility into reality. This doesn't mean reckless leaps or abandoning responsibilities overnight. It means taking deliberate steps, starting small, building steadily, allowing meaning to emerge through doing rather than imagining. Bliss is not a gift bestowed upon the lucky. It is a practice cultivated by the committed. Choose one thing you've been waiting to feel ready for. Take a small, concrete action towards it this week, no matter how imperfect it feels.
You are listening to the Rich Diary Podcast Show.
Chapter 8. Portals of Discovery. Growth rarely announces itself. It enters quietly through uncertainty. Life has a way of opening doors we never planned to walk through. Sometimes they appear as opportunities, an unexpected invitation, a chance encounter, a new responsibility. Other times, they arrive disguised as disruptions, loss, failure, relocation, or uncertainty. In both cases, they function as portals of discovery, moments that pull us out of familiar patterns and invite us into deeper understanding. Most of us prefer predictability. We build routines to create a sense of control. We stick to what we know because it feels safe. But safety, while comforting, can also limit growth. When life becomes too predictable, curiosity fades and learning slows. Portals of discovery interrupt this comfort. They ask us to pay attention. They ask us to adapt. They ask us to grow. These moments often arrive without warning and rarely with instructions. They can feel disorienting, even threatening. But within them lies the potential for transformation. The question is not whether these portals will appear. They always do. The question is how we respond when they open. Many people resist change instinctively. When routines are disrupted, fear surfaces. We worry about losing control, making mistakes, or stepping into the unknown. These fears are natural. They are signs that something unfamiliar is happening. But unfamiliar does not mean harmful. Uncertain does not mean wrong. Some of the most meaningful experiences in life begin with discomfort. Think of the moments that shaped you most deeply. They were probably not the easiest ones. They were the moments that challenged your assumptions,
tested your resilience, and forced you to rethink who you were and what you valued. Portals of discovery expand perspective. They introduce us to new people, ideas, and ways of seeing the world. They reveal strengths we didn't know we had and vulnerabilities we hadn't acknowledged. They loosen the grip of old narratives and invite new ones to emerge. Travel is a powerful example. When we leave familiar environments, our assumptions are challenged. We see how differently people live, work, and define success. We realize that our way is not the only way. This awareness fosters humility and empathy. But discovery doesn't require distant travel. It can happen in conversations, books, volunteer work, or new roles. Any experience that stretches understanding can become a portal. What matters is openness. Approaching new experiences with curiosity rather than judgment allows learning to occur. When we cling tightly to what we already know, discovery has nowhere to land. This openness requires humility. It requires admitting that we don't have all the answers, and that's okay. Portals of discovery also involve loss. Growth often means leaving something behind, an identity, a belief, a version of ourselves that no longer fits. Letting go can be painful. It can feel like failure or betrayal. But letting go is not erasing the past. It is honoring growth. Every stage of life prepares us for the next. What was once necessary may later become limiting. Recognizing this allows us to transition with gratitude rather than regret. Another challenge is that discovery rarely happens on our preferred timeline. We want clarity quickly. We want uncertainty resolved. But meaningful insight unfolds slowly. Patience is essential. Rushing through discovery can lead to superficial understanding. Sitting with uncertainty without forcing answers allows deeper truths to emerge. In moments of transition, it can help to ask reflective questions. What is this experience teaching me? What assumptions is it challenging? What strengths is it asking me to develop? These questions turn disruption into dialogue. Portals of discovery also reveal our values. In unfamiliar situations, what matters most becomes clearer. We notice what we miss, what we defend, and what we're willing to change. This awareness helps us live more deliberately. Not every portal leads to immediate clarity. Some lead to confusion before insight. But confusion is not failure. It is a stage of learning. The danger lies not in uncertainty, but in avoidance. Avoiding discovery keeps life small. It protects comfort, but sacrifices depth. Engaging with discovery, even when it's uncomfortable, expands understanding and resilience. Life is dynamic. The people we admire most are not those who avoided disruption, but those who learned from it. They allowed change to refine them rather than harden them. Portals of discovery remind us that identity is not fixed. We are always becoming. Each experience adds texture to who we are. Each challenge deepens perspective. Each moment of openness expands our capacity to engage with the world meaningfully. This week, notice one situation that feels unfamiliar or uncomfortable. Instead of resisting it, approach it with curiosity. Ask, what might this be inviting me to learn?
You are listening to the Rich Diary Podcast Show.
Chapter 9. Be careful what you wish for. Not everything we want is aligned with who we need to become. From a young age, we are taught to want things. We are encouraged to set goals, dream big, and visualize success. Wanting is framed as ambition, and ambition is framed as virtue. If we want something badly enough and work hard enough, we are told it will make us happy. Sometimes that's true, but often the things we wish for carry hidden costs, and when those costs arrive, they can be surprising, even disorienting. This is why wisdom has long warned us to be careful what we wish for.
Not because desire is wrong, but because desire is incomplete information. We tend to imagine outcomes without fully imagining their consequences. We picture the title, not the pressure, the income, not the dependency, the recognition, not the scrutiny. Every achievement changes the shape of our lives. Some doors open, others close. Freedom in one area can mean constraint in another. Success is never free. One of the quiet dangers of ambition is that it can become borrowed. We absorb definitions of success from parents, peers, culture, and media without realizing it. We chase goals that look impressive rather than ones that feel meaningful. And because these goals are socially rewarded, they can take us far, sometimes very far, before we realize they're not aligned with our values. The result is a strange kind of disappointment, achieving what you wanted and discovering it doesn't want you back. People rarely talk about this. Success is supposed to be satisfying. Admitting otherwise can feel ungrateful or confusing. So dissatisfaction often stays private, but it is common. The problem is not that people are ungrateful. The problem is that they confused achievement with fulfillment. Achievement measures outcome. Fulfillment measures alignment. You can achieve many things and still feel disconnected from yourself. You can reach milestones and wonder why they don't bring the peace you expected. This is not failure, it is feedback. Life is asking a question: is this really what matters to you? Another challenge is that wanting often focuses on external markers rather than internal experience. We want things because of how we believe they will make us feel: respected, secure, admired, free. But those feelings are not guaranteed by circumstances. They come from congruence between values and actions. When we pursue goals without examining the values beneath them, we risk building lives that look successful but feel hollow. This doesn't mean abandoning ambition, it means refining it. Wise ambition asks different questions. What kind of life will this create? What will this require of me? Who might this ask me to become? And perhaps most importantly, what will this cost me in time, relationships, and attention? Cost is not a reason to avoid goals, but it is a reason to choose consciously. Some wishes demand constant maintenance. Some demand emotional distance. Some demand compromise of values. The danger lies not in wanting, but in wanting blindly. Be careful what you wish for does not mean lower your aspirations. It means deepen your awareness. It means recognizing that the things we admire often come with burdens invisible from the outside, that no life is without trade-offs, that every choice, especially ambitious ones, reshapes us. Another subtle risk is identity fusion. When success becomes central to identity, losing it or questioning it feels like losing oneself. This creates fragility. It makes change terrifying. It traps people in roles they've outgrown. A healthy identity is flexible. It allows growth. It allows reevaluation. The ability to revise goals, to say, "This no longer fits me," is not weakness. It is maturity. Life unfolds in seasons. What made sense once may not make sense forever. Holding goals lightly allows adaptation without collapse. Be careful what you wish for is also a reminder to pay attention to the present. Constantly reaching for the next achievement can prevent appreciation of what already exists. Fulfillment is not postponed until arrival, it is cultivated along the way. When all satisfaction is deferred, life becomes a waiting room. Meaning lives in engagement, not anticipation. This chapter is not an argument against striving. It is an argument for reflective striving, for choosing goals that nourish rather than consume, for aligning ambition with values rather than ego. The most meaningful wishes are not about becoming more impressive, they are about becoming more whole. Choose one goal you are currently pursuing and ask yourself honestly,
If I achieved this, what would my life look like day to day, and does that life align with what I truly value?
You are listening to the Rich Diary Podcast Show.
Chapter 9. Be careful what you wish for. Not everything we want is aligned with who we need to become. From a young age, we are taught to want things. We are encouraged to set goals, dream big, and visualize success. Wanting is framed as ambition, and ambition is framed as virtue. If we want something badly enough and work hard enough, we are told it will make us happy. Sometimes that's true, but often the things we wish for carry hidden costs, and when those costs arrive, they can be surprising, even disorienting. This is why wisdom has long warned us to be careful what we wish for, not because desire is wrong, but because desire is incomplete information. We tend to imagine outcomes without fully imagining their consequences. We picture the title, not the pressure, the income, not the dependency, the recognition, not the scrutiny. Every achievement changes the shape of our lives. Some doors open, others close. Freedom in one area can mean constraint in another. Success is never free. One of the quiet dangers of ambition is that it can become borrowed. We absorb definitions of success from parents, peers, culture, and media without realizing it. We chase goals that look impressive rather than ones that feel meaningful. And because these goals are socially rewarded, they can take us far, sometimes very far, before we realize they're not aligned with our values. The result is a strange kind of disappointment, achieving what you wanted and discovering it doesn't want you back. People rarely talk about this. Success is supposed to be satisfying. Admitting otherwise can feel ungrateful or confusing. So dissatisfaction often stays private, but it is common. The problem is not that people are ungrateful. The problem is that they confused achievement with fulfillment. Achievement measures outcome. Fulfillment measures alignment. You can achieve many things and still feel disconnected from yourself. You can reach milestones and wonder why they don't bring the peace you expected. This is not failure, it is feedback. Life is asking a question: is this really what matters to you? Another challenge is that wanting often focuses on external markers rather than internal experience. We want things because of how we believe they will make us feel: respected, secure, admired, free. But those feelings are not guaranteed by circumstances. They come from congruence between values and actions. When we pursue goals without examining the values beneath them, we risk building lives that look successful but feel hollow. This doesn't mean abandoning ambition, it means refining it. Wise ambition asks different questions. What kind of life will this create? What will this require of me? Who might this ask me to become? And perhaps most importantly, what will this cost me in time, relationships, and attention? Cost is not a reason to avoid goals, but it is a reason to choose consciously. Some wishes demand constant maintenance. Some demand emotional distance. Some demand compromise of values. The danger lies not in wanting, but in wanting blindly. Be careful what you wish for does not mean lower your aspirations. It means deepen your awareness. It means recognizing that the things we admire often come with burdens invisible from the outside, that no life is without trade-offs, that every choice, especially ambitious ones, reshapes us. Another subtle risk is identity fusion. When success becomes central to identity, losing it or questioning it feels like losing oneself. This creates fragility. It makes change terrifying. It traps people in roles they've outgrown. A healthy identity is flexible. It allows growth. It allows reevaluation. The ability to revise goals, to say, "This no longer fits me," is not weakness. It is maturity. Life unfolds in seasons. What made sense once may not make sense forever. Holding goals lightly allows adaptation without collapse. Be careful what you wish for is also a reminder to pay attention to the present. Constantly reaching for the next achievement can prevent appreciation of what already exists. Fulfillment is not postponed until arrival, it is cultivated along the way. When all satisfaction is deferred, life becomes a waiting room. Meaning lives in engagement, not anticipation. This chapter is not an argument against striving, it is an argument for reflective striving, for choosing goals that nourish rather than consume, for aligning ambition with values rather than ego. The most meaningful wishes are not about becoming more impressive, they are about becoming more whole. Choose one goal you are currently pursuing and ask yourself honestly, if I achieved this, what would my life look like day to day, and does that life align with what I truly value?
You are listening to the Rich Diary Podcast Show.
Chapter 10. What we mean when we say success. Success is not what you achieve. It is how you live while achieving it. Success is one of the most commonly used words in our language, and one of the least examined. We talk about it as if its meaning were obvious. We assume everyone knows what it looks like. We measure it with numbers, titles, and milestones. We celebrate it publicly and pursue it relentlessly. But when you strip away the assumptions, a deeper question remains. What do we actually mean when we say success? For many, success is defined externally. It is measured by income, recognition, power, or influence. These markers are visible. They are easy to quantify. And because they can be compared, they lend themselves well to competition. But external measures tell us very little about the quality of a person's life. They don't tell us whether someone feels at peace. They don't tell us whether relationships are healthy. They don't tell us whether work feels meaningful or empty. They tell us only how someone appears from the outside. This gap between appearance and experience is where confusion begins. People can look successful and feel lost. They can achieve widely admired goals and still feel disconnected. They can meet every expectation placed on them and wonder why fulfillment remains elusive. This doesn't mean external success is wrong. It means it is incomplete. A life measured only by outcomes risks overlooking the process by which those outcomes are achieved, and process matters. How we pursue success shapes who we become. If success demands constant stress, compromised values, or neglected relationships, then its price may be too high, even if the reward is impressive. When achievement requires sacrificing integrity, the result is not success, but substitution. True success integrates rather than fragments. It aligns effort with values. It allows ambition to coexist with empathy. It creates space for growth, reflection, and connection. One way to understand success more clearly is to look at what remains when external markers are stripped away. When titles fade, when income fluctuates, when recognition moves on, as it inevitably does, what is left? Character remains. Relationships remain. The way we've treated others remains. These are not side effects of success, they are its substance. A meaningful definition of success includes living in accordance with one's values, contributing to the well-being of others, maintaining curiosity and growth, preserving dignity and self-respect. These elements are not as easily measured, but they are far more enduring. Another problem with conventional definitions of success is that they encourage comparison. When success is defined relative to others, satisfaction becomes unstable. There will always be someone ahead, someone earning more, someone admired more widely. Comparison turns life into a scoreboard, and scoreboards never rest. When success is internal, when it is defined by alignment and integrity, it becomes self-sustaining. It does not depend on outperforming others. It depends on being honest with oneself. This shift changes how we experience achievement. Instead of asking, "How do I look?" we ask, "How do I feel living this way?"
Instead of asking, "Am I winning?" we ask, "Am I becoming who I want to be?" This reframing allows for diversity and success. Different lives can be successful in different ways. A teacher, an entrepreneur, a caregiver, an artist, each may live a successful life without sharing the same outcomes. Success is not one size fits all. It is deeply personal. It is also dynamic. What success means at one stage of life may change at another. Early success may involve exploration and risk. Later success may involve stability, contribution, or mentorship. Clinging to outdated definitions can prevent growth. Wisdom involves updating definitions. Another overlooked aspect of success is sustainability. A success that cannot be sustained without burnout, dishonesty, or harm is not success, it is extraction. Sustainable success allows room for rest. It allows mistakes without collapse. It allows humanity. It also allows for generosity. When success is defined broadly, it naturally includes giving of time, attention, and resources. It recognizes that a life well lived does not end at the self. The most successful people, in the deepest sense, often share a common trait. They are grounded. They are not chasing validation. They are engaged in meaningful work, connected to others, and at peace with their choices, even when those choices are difficult. They have redefined success in a way that serves their lives rather than consumes them. This chapter is not an argument against achievement. It is an invitation to clarity, to examine inherited definitions and decide which ones are worth keeping. Success is not a destination you reach. It is a way of traveling. Write down your personal definition of success using no external markers like money, titles, or status. Ask yourself, if I lived by this definition, what would change in how I spend my time and energy?
You are listening to the Rich Diary Podcast Show.
Chapter 11. The Perils of Prosperity. Comfort can be a blessing or a quiet thief of purpose. Prosperity is usually framed as an unqualified good. We strive for it. We admire those who achieve it. We measure progress by its growth. And in many ways, prosperity does improve lives. It can reduce suffering, expand opportunity, and create security. These are real and meaningful benefits. But prosperity also carries risks, subtle ones that are easy to overlook. The danger of prosperity is not excess, it is complacency. When basic needs are met, urgency fades. When comfort becomes routine, curiosity can dull. When struggle is removed too completely, growth slows. This is not a moral failing, it is a human tendency. Comfort, left unexamined, can quietly replace purpose. One of the most common side effects of prosperity is disconnection. As people become more insulated from hardship, they may lose contact with experiences different from their own. Neighborhoods become homogeneous, social circles narrow. Problems that once felt urgent become abstract. This distance makes it easier to misunderstand others and harder to empathize. Prosperity can create bubbles. Within these bubbles, it becomes tempting to assume that one's experience is universal, that success is primarily the result of effort, and that those who struggle simply lack discipline or ambition. These assumptions are rarely voiced outright, but they shape attitudes and policies in powerful ways. Prosperity without perspective breeds entitlement. Prosperity with perspective breeds responsibility. Another peril of prosperity is distraction. When resources are abundant, entertainment multiplies. Discomfort can be numbed rather than addressed. Silence can be filled endlessly. Reflection becomes optional. But meaning requires reflection. A life filled with stimulation but empty of contemplation can feel busy and hollow at the same time. Without intentional pauses, it becomes easy to lose sight of values and drift into patterns that feel comfortable but unfulfilling. Prosperity also alters motivation. When survival is no longer at stake, the reasons for effort must shift. If work is pursued only for reward rather than contribution, it can quickly feel pointless, even when it is lucrative. This is why many people who have it all still feel restless. They have achieved what they were told to want, but not what they need to feel engaged. The problem is not having enough. The problem is forgetting why enough matters. Prosperity can also distort parenting. Wanting to give children better lives, parents may remove every obstacle, provide every convenience, and protect against every discomfort. While well-intentioned, this can leave children unprepared for challenge. Resilience is built through effort. Perspective is built through struggle. Without exposure to difficulty, gratitude becomes fragile and entitlement takes root. The goal is not to withhold opportunity, but to preserve effort, to allow young people to experience responsibility, consequence, and the satisfaction of earning their progress. Another quiet peril of prosperity is fear of loss. Once comfort is achieved, maintaining it can become a driving concern. People may avoid risk, silence their convictions, or compromise values to protect what they've built. Prosperity then becomes a cage rather than a foundation. True security is not the absence of risk, it is the presence of values strong enough to guide decisions even when comfort is threatened. This is why gratitude is essential. Gratitude counteracts complacency. It reminds us that comfort is not guaranteed. It renews awareness of interdependence. It transforms prosperity from entitlement into stewardship. Gratitude shifts the question from "what do I get to keep" to "what do I get to do with what I've been given?" Prosperity does not demand guilt. It demands consciousness. Conscious living means staying connected to reality beyond one's own experience. It means listening to different stories. It means recognizing that comfort is not proof of virtue, nor is hardship proof of failure. It also means giving back, not as charity alone, but as engagement, as partnership, as shared responsibility. The most meaningful antidote to the perils of prosperity is purpose. Purpose keeps comfort from becoming stagnation. Purpose keeps success from becoming isolation. Purpose keeps abundance from becoming excess. When prosperity is paired with purpose, it becomes a force for good. It expands opportunity not just for individuals, but for communities. It fosters generosity without condescension and ambition without exploitation. Prosperity is not the enemy. Unexamined prosperity is. Identify one area of comfort in your life that you rarely question. Reflect on how it may be shaping your perspective and how you might use that comfort more consciously in service of others.
You are listening to the Rich Diary Podcast Show.
Begin it now. There is no perfect moment, only the moment you choose to begin. If there is one thing this book has tried to say, again and again, it is this: life does not wait. It does not pause while we gather certainty. It does not slow down while we resolve every doubt. It moves, quietly, steadily, relentlessly, whether we are ready or not. And yet, many of us live as if life will begin later. Later, when we're more confident. Later, when circumstances improve. Later, when we feel prepared. But later is not a place we ever arrive. The idea that we must wait for perfect conditions before engaging fully with life is one of the most persistent illusions we carry. It keeps us planning instead of participating, imagining instead of acting. This epilogue is not about reflection alone. It is about invitation, an invitation to begin, not someday, but now. Throughout this book, we've explored questions of privilege, responsibility, choice, vocation, success, prosperity, and generosity.
We've examined how meaning is created not by accident, but by intention. And if there is a single thread running through all of it, it is this: a meaningful life is built through action aligned with values, not through certainty, not through perfection, through action. Beginning does not require clarity, it requires honesty. Honesty about what matters to you, honesty about what you've been avoiding, honesty about what kind of person you are becoming through your daily choices. Beginnings are often quiet. They rarely look dramatic. They may involve small, unglamorous steps that feel almost insignificant, but those steps matter more than grand intentions that remain unrealized. The smallest action taken in alignment with your values has more power than the most beautiful plan left untouched. Many people underestimate the cumulative effect of daily choices. They imagine change as a sudden transformation rather than a gradual process. But lives are shaped incrementally. Direction matters more than speed. What you do repeatedly becomes who you are. Beginning now also means accepting imperfection. Waiting for readiness often masks fear of failure, judgment, or disappointment. But failure is not the opposite of meaning. Avoidance is. Mistakes are not signs that you shouldn't have begun. They are signs that you are engaged. Engagement is where learning happens. Engagement is where resilience grows. Engagement is where meaning takes root. Another barrier to beginning is comparison. We look around and see others who seem further along, more confident, more successful. We tell ourselves we're behind, that it's too late, that the moment has passed. But life does not follow a single timeline. There is no universal schedule for purpose. Some people begin early, others begin late. What matters is not when you start, but whether you start at all. Beginning now also requires courage, the quiet kind. The courage to live without guarantees. The courage to make choices that may not be widely understood. The courage to take responsibility for your life rather than outsourcing it to expectations. Courage does not eliminate fear. It moves forward alongside it. As you move forward, remember this: meaning is not something you find and keep forever. It must be renewed, chosen again and again, lived daily. You will lose your way at times. You will doubt your choices. You will change your mind. None of this disqualifies you. A meaningful life is not a straight line. It is a conversation between intention and experience, between who you are and who you are becoming. And perhaps the most important realization of all is this: you do not need to live an extraordinary life to live a meaningful one. You do not need fame, wealth, or recognition. You need presence, integrity, engagement. You need to show up, honestly and consistently, for the life in front of you. Meaning lives in attention, in care, in responsibility. It lives in how you treat people when no one is watching, in how you use what you've been given, in how you respond to difficulty. Life is what you make it, not in some abstract heroic sense, but in the small, ordinary choices that fill your days. So begin it now. Begin by asking better questions. Begin by listening more deeply. Begin by aligning one action with one value. Begin where you are. Begin with what you have. Begin imperfectly. The rest will follow. As you finish this audiobook, pause. Take one deep breath. Then choose one small action you can take today that reflects the life you want to live, and do it. Not tomorrow, not someday. Begin it now.
And this is the Rich Diary Podcast. If you love this content, please subscribe and share now. Mondays to Fridays, 12 p.m. each day. The Rich Diary Podcast, solely for education, motivation, empowerment, and striving for mastery. The Rich Diary Podcast, solely for education, motivation, empowerment, and striving for mastery. Please like, subscribe, and share now.